For a year, my roommate Rachel and I waged a quiet war over Tristan, the campus golden boy. I woke at 5 for his favorite pastries. Rachel spent a fortune on a Times Square billboard. I worked 3 jobs for his birthday sneakers. Rachel gave him a Porsche. Seeing my exhausted eyes, Rachel sneered. "Give it up, Kelly. Your broke devotion means nothing. I would trade my 8 billionaire brothers for him." "Can you?" A leaked DNA test exposed her. She was a fraud. I was the true heiress, finally home. At the estate gates, I still clutched the cheap scarf I had knitted for Tristan. Inside, 8 men awaited. A Wall Street titan, an aloof star, a surgical genius. Staring at these perfect faces, my obsession shattered. Why pine for a college boy? I was born to be their sister. Tristan was merely a footnote. With 8 masterpieces before me, who needed a boyfriend? Kelly, so what if they brought you back? You can never wash off that cheap, poverty-stricken stench. Tristan won't even spare you a second glance. Rachel's shrill voice still echoed in the back of my mind. I stepped fully into the foyer. There was no melodramatic, wealthy family hostility waiting for me. Just 8 men staring at me with quiet intensity. The man at the front wore a tailored black suit, his sharp features exuding absolute authority. "You're Kelly?" I shook my head slowly. "My name is Kelly Hickey." The eldest brother paused, a flicker of surprise crossing his eyes, before he gave a firm nod. "I am Arthur Hickey. Your oldest brother." His voice softened. "Welcome home." Beside him, a man with a chillingly handsome, unapproachable vibe offered a slight nod. "Second brother, Rowan. Third brother, Oliver." A man in a pristine white doctor's coat massaged his own wrist gently. The rest of the brothers introduced themselves down the line, ending with a rebellious-looking guy leaning against the wall who let out a soft huff. "I'm your 8th brother, Zane." 8 impossibly attractive men, bound to me by blood, just crashed right into my reality. I looked down at the handmade scarf in my hands, then back up at these 8 incredible brothers. Tristan couldn't even compare to a single strand of their hair. Without a second thought, I tossed the scarf straight into the nearest designer trash can. My eyes sparkled as I looked at Arthur. "Arthur, do you have a headache?" He froze, his fingers instinctively dropping from where they had been pressing into his temples. "An old habit." "It's nothing." "How can it be nothing?" Rule number 1 of being the ultimate sister: a brother's pain is my pain. I immediately poured a glass of warm water, pressed it into his hands, and guided him to the plush leather sofa. I learned deep tissue therapy at one of my old jobs. "Let me help you ease the tension, okay?" Just then, Rachel strutted through the front door. She playfully shook her wrist, showing off a glittering crystal bracelet with a sickly sweet smile. "Tristan insisted on buying me this bracelet today." I told him it was too much, but he just wouldn't listen. I didn't even spare her a glance. Tristan buying gifts? What did that have to do with me? I only cared about fixing my brother's headache. Meeting my stubborn gaze, Arthur finally took a sip of the water and sighed. "You don't need to massage me. You just got home. Go rest." He set the glass down. "Since you're back, just settle in and breathe. If you are missing anything, tell me." The words were spoken so lightly, but they crashed into my heart with the force of a tidal wave. A sharp, burning sensation surged at the back of my nose. I finally had a brother. Countless times in the past, I had stood in the pouring rain, watching classmates get picked up by their older brothers with warm smiles and dry umbrellas, while I had to run through the mud with a heavy backpack dragging me down. Now, someone who shared my blood was asking me what I needed. I blinked hard, forcing back the wetness in my eyes. "I'm not tired. Just sit still, Arthur. I promise you'll feel better in 10 minutes. My fingers found the exact pressure points on his neck and shoulders. I had learned these techniques working at a shady spa just so I could earn extra cash to buy Tristan those stupid shoes. I never imagined I'd be using the skill to comfort my own flesh and blood. Under my steady hands, Arthur's rigid posture slowly melted into the sofa. The other brothers exchanged surprised glances. Ignored by everyone, Rachel pivoted and latched onto Oliver. "Oliver, Tristan's stomach is really acting up today. Could you write him a prescription?" Oliver continued massaging his own wrist, his expression cool. "Rachel, I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I don't do gastroenterology. Tell him to book a regular hospital appointment." Rachel pouted, ready to whine again. I immediately stopped massaging Arthur and looked at the doctor. "Oliver, what's wrong with your wrist?" He looked momentarily caught off guard. "Just occupational strain from long surgeries. It's fine." I spun around and bolted toward the kitchen. By the time I came back, Rachel was already throwing a fit. Tristan is in so much pain he can't even eat. How can you be so cold-blooded? Oliver's face darkened, but before he could speak, I marched right past Rachel and firmly pressed a steaming hot herbal compress against his wrist. Don't you dare yell at my brother. Do you have any idea how important a lead surgeon's hands are? Rachel glared at me, her teeth grinding together. Stop acting so high and mighty, Kelly. You didn't have this attitude when you were following him around like a stray dog. Now you flip the script the second you get some money. It just proves I'm the only one who truly loves him. She stormed off, muttering toxic complaints under her breath. I kept my head down, carefully adjusting the heat pack on Oliver's skin. Oliver stared at me, the deep crease between his brows slowly smoothing out. For the first 3 months at the Hickey estate, I was a blur of motion. Mornings meant brewing a restorative stomach-soothing tea for Arthur. Evenings were for applying heat therapy to Oliver's joints. Right before bed, I'd set up specialized aromatherapy diffusers for Rowan's insomnia. As for Rachel and Tristan? Sorry, my schedule was fully booked. One morning, as I walked into the lecture hall, whispers erupted around me. I heard Kelly got taken back by the Hickey family. So what? Rachel still gets chauffeured in luxury cars while Kelly takes the subway. Plus, Tristan still hates her. I tuned out the noise, took a seat in the back corner, and pulled out my textbook on advanced kinesiology. Sebastian, my 7th brother, was having flare-ups with his cervical spine. I needed to memorize some new physical therapy techniques. Barely a page in, Tristan slid into the seat next to mine. He was wearing the limited edition sneakers I had bled myself dry to buy, flashing a smile he probably practiced in the mirror. Kelly, I haven't seen you around lately. I looked up, staring at him with absolute zero emotion. How did I never notice how asymmetrical his eyes were? And his nose bridge was incredibly flat. He didn't possess even half the raw magnetism of my 5th brother, Jax. Do you need something? My voice was ice. Tristan looked genuinely taken aback by my tone. I know you just moved back to the Hickey house, and it might be hard to adjust. If you're feeling wronged, you can always talk to me. He slid a ridiculously expensive chocolate bar across the desk. This is your favorite brand. I went out of my way to get it for you. I stared at the chocolate, feeling utterly empty. In the past, a crumb of attention from him would have kept me high for days. Now, it was just pathetic. No thanks. I don't like sweets anymore. I shoved the chocolate back to his side of the table. Tristan, unless someone is dying, don't bother me. I have a life. He froze, an ugly shade of red creeping up his neck. Right on cue, Rachel practically glided into the classroom and threw her arms around him. Babe, were you looking for me? She shot me a triumphant, venomous glare. Kelly, he just pities you. Don't go getting delusional. I genuinely didn't hear the rest of her sentence, too busy highlighting a diagram of spinal nerves. Rachel, don't talk like that, Tristan scolded weakly, though he made no effort to remove her hands from his chest. Rachel's ego only inflated. Jax lent his limited edition supercar to Tristan today. We're going for a coastal drive later. My highlighter stopped dead on the page. Jax treated his cars better than most people treat their children. He didn't even let the valet touch the steering wheel. How did Rachel manage to get the keys for Tristan? A knot of anxiety tightened in my chest, but it had nothing to do with jealousy. I was terrified for Jax's car. Tristan was an absolute menace on the road. When I got home that afternoon, my fears were confirmed. Jax was sitting on the living room sofa, his face resembling a thundercloud. Jax, did the car get scratched? He didn't say a word, which was answer enough. I jogged down to the massive underground garage. Sure enough, a nasty, jagged scratch marred the custom paint job on the passenger side. Back when I worked at an auto detailing shop, I handled surface-level damage like this all the time. I grabbed the premium compound and polish from the garage shelves. Apply, buff, blend. In less than 10 minutes, the scratch was a ghost. Jax came down and stared at me, dumbfounded. You know how to do this? Picked it up at one of my old jobs. I wiped my hands on a microfiber cloth. Jax, if you cherish something, don't let outsiders who don't understand its value touch it. Don't lend your babies out anymore. He fell silent for a long time. Finally, he pressed a clean wet wipe into my palm. Yeah. You have good hands. Thanks, little sister. My head snapped up, my heart skipping a massive beat. That was the very first time Jax had called me his sister. I felt like I was floating, my brother complex radar screaming at maximum volume. Anytime. Whatever you need, Jax, I've got your back. Watching my beaming face, the hard, cold lines around his mouth finally broke into a genuine smile. During dinner, Rachel boldly suggested that Sebastian make a guest appearance to endorse Tristan's upcoming amateur art exhibit. Sebastian, Tristan really needs this industry exposure. Please just help him out, she begged. Sebastian was a reclusive soul. He despised networking and loathed the media. When no one spoke up, Rachel's eyes filled with calculated tears. Please. Sebastian set his silverware down, a deep crease forming between his brows. Before he could even utter a word of refusal, I snapped. Sebastian's cervical spine is acting up. He can't stand around for hours. I glared across the table. And what does Tristan's little vanity project have to do with my brother? Rachel shot me a death glare. You're just bitter because he chose me over you. Tristan is overflowing with talent. If Sebastian goes, it'll be two geniuses joining forces. Joining forces? I let out a harsh, barking laugh. Tristan paints like a blindfolded toddler. You think that garbage deserves to even exist in the same room as Sebastian's fine art? You. Rachel trembled with rage. Enough. Arthur massaged his temples. Sebastian, it is your call. Sebastian looked at Rachel's furious face, then shifted his gaze to me. My health hasn't been great lately. I won't be attending. Rachel's face drained of color. She stared at him in pure disbelief. I felt a rush of absolute victory. I picked up a perfectly braised short rib and placed it in Felix's bowl. Felix, you need to eat more. The usually aloof music producer looked at the meat in his bowl, the corners of his lips curling up ever so slightly. Thanks. Over the next few months, Rachel threw a new tantrum almost weekly. She cried and screamed when Rowan refused to throw his studio's weight behind Tristan's audition. She was caught red-handed stealing Felix's priceless vintage vinyl records to impress Tristan's indie friends. Whatever tolerance the brothers once held for her was completely eroded by her relentless, toxic obsession with that boy. Yet she remained entirely oblivious, her arrogance only growing. Kelly, I haven't seen you throwing yourself at Tristan lately, she mocked me in the hallway one afternoon. Finally realized you're too trashy for him? Recently, she had stooped to a new low, forging Arthur's signature to secure millions in corporate sponsorships for Tristan's startup. Tristan, being the parasite he was, blew through the cash in weeks. The sponsors demanded answers from Hickey Corporation. Arthur hit the roof and ordered Rachel into his study. I was in the kitchen simmering a nutrient broth for Silas, listening to the muffled screaming from upstairs without a shred of sympathy. Moments later, Rachel sprinted down the stairs, tears streaming down her face. This is all your fault, Kelly, she shrieked. You snitched to Arthur. You're trying to ruin Tristan's reputation. I looked at her with pure ice in my veins. Rachel, if you're clinically insane, go see a doctor. Tristan is a failure who can't hold on to money. How is that my problem? Liar, she screamed. He isn't like that. You're just jealous that he loves me, so you framed him. The commotion drew our parents out. Rachel instantly threw herself into our mother's arms, hyperventilating. Mom. Just because she can't have him, she's spreading rumors and tattling to Arthur. Now Tristan is drowning in debt. Mom's heart broke for her. She turned a severe, disappointed glare on me. Kelly, are you really playing these dirty little tricks behind our backs over some college boy? I took a slow, deep breath. I have absolutely no idea what Tristan does with his money. Stop lying to my face. Mom raised her voice. Rachel has had a pure heart since she was a child. She wouldn't make this up. You just got back here, why is your heart so full of venom? I stared at the heavy disappointment in my mother's eyes. I will say it exactly one more time. I didn't do it. Believe what you want. Without another word, I picked up the tray and walked straight up to the sixth brother's room. Silas, I made you some broth. And I got these new active noise-canceling headphones. Try them out, let me know if they help you focus. Silas took the bowl and the sleek black case. How did you know my old ones broke? I smiled softly. Rule number 2 of being the ultimate sister, know every tiny detail about your brother's lives. By the next day, vicious rumors that I had framed Tristan out of spite were flying around campus. Look, that's her. If she can't have him, she destroys him. Psycho. How did the Hickey family end up with trash like that? Rachel is way classier. I walked through the whispers like they were made of air. At lunch, Tristan blocked my path in the cafeteria, wearing an expression of deep, wounded sorrow. Kelly, why are you doing this to me? Even if your feelings faded, you didn't have to push me toward bankruptcy. Looking at his incredibly punchable, hypocritical face, I felt a wave of nausea. Are you going to stand there and tell me you didn't blow that money yourself? His eyes darted away for a fraction of a second. That was just a bad investment. Why are you so obsessed with ruining me? I let out a sharp laugh. Get out of my way, you stray dog. I shoved past his shoulder and marched out of the cafeteria. When I got home, Rachel was curled up next to Mom on the sofa. The second she saw me, she flinched and shrank back, playing the terrified victim. Mom's expression hardened further. Where have you been, Kelly? You couldn't even bother to come home for dinner? I was at the library. I bypassed the living room entirely, heading straight to the kitchen to prep a fresh herbal compress for Sebastian. They could think whatever they wanted. I only cared that Sebastian's spine got treated on time. Rachel sniffled, her voice dripping with venom. Who knows if she was out meeting some shady thugs? Mom, look at her attitude. After months of relentless begging, weaponizing Mom's guilt, and exploiting 20 years of sibling history, Rowan finally caved and agreed to bring Tristan onto a reality TV show. As a devoted sister, there was zero chance I was letting Rowan go alone. I marched right into the production crew as an assistant. Babe, don't be nervous. Rowan is here, no one will dare mess with you, Rachel cooed in the green room. Tristan patted her hair. I know. Don't worry. I clutched a thermos tightly to my chest, scanning the room entirely for Rowan. He was in the makeup chair. I set the thermos down in front of him. Rowan, it's chamomile and valerian root. Drink it while it's hot, it'll help with the anxiety. He had barely taken the cup when Rachel dragged Tristan into the space. Rowan. It's Tristan's first time on a variety show, you have to guide him. Rowan frowned. After the sponsorship disaster, he had less than zero respect for the kid. He offered a non-committal grunt. Once the cameras rolled, Tristan was an absolute catastrophe. He refused to follow the script, constantly interrupted to steal screen time, and deliberately dragged his feet during team challenges. It all went to hell during the high-altitude obstacle course. Paralyzed by fear, Tristan didn't just fail to secure Rowan's harness during a transition, he panicked and shoved Rowan hard. If Rowan hadn't possessed god-tier reflexes and grabbed the safety line with his bare hands, he would have plummeted. The set erupted in chaos. The director screamed to cut the feed. Rowan was lowered down by the panicked crew. His face was chalk white, the skin on his palms and wrists torn to shreds by the friction of the rope. I sprinted through the crowd, dropping to my knees with antiseptic spray and bandages. Rowan. Are you okay? God, does it hurt? He looked at my trembling hands and terrified eyes. The hardness in his gaze cracked. I'm fine. Don't panic. Leaked footage of the incident hit the internet, and Tristan was slaughtered in the comments. He hid in his apartment, too terrified to show his face. But barely 24 hours later, the narrative violently flipped. Who the hell does Rowan Hickey think he is? Bullying rookies just because he's a megastar? Poor Tristan. He almost died and still had to smile for the cameras. Cancel Rowan. Get this toxic trash out of the industry. Inside the Hickey mansion, the atmosphere was absolute zero. Our parents were livid. What is the meaning of this? Rachel pointed a trembling finger at me, tears streaming down her perfectly contoured face. Dad, Mom, she did it. I swear. She sabotaged the safety gear and paid troll farms to smear Rowan's name, all just to destroy Tristan and frame him for hurting her brother. I stared at her, my mind blanking at the sheer audacity. Are you psychotic? Why would I ever hurt Rowan? You did it, she shrieked. I saw you sneaking into the prop room. You are pure evil, Kelly. The house staff whispered nervously in the background. The real daughter is terrifying. Hurting her own brother. Miss Rachel is too innocent for this house. Smack. Mom's hand connected violently with my cheek. You have disappointed me for the last time, she screamed. Has Rowan not been good enough to you? How could you try to kill him? I held my burning cheek, the tears pooling hot and fast in my eyes. Right on cue, Tristan stepped out from the hallway shadows. Kelly, I know you only did this to get my attention. He sighed like a martyr. If you just admit what you did, I'll go online and ask the fans to forgive you. I looked at his sickeningly fake face. I looked at Rachel, squeezing out crocodile tears. A surge of pure, unadulterated rage erupted from the very core of my soul, drowning out everything else. I lunged forward, grabbed Rachel by the collar of her expensive blouse, and slapped her across the face with everything I had. You can insult me. You can call me poor. You can steal my life. But you will never touch my brothers. What the fuck is Tristan? He isn't even fit to wipe Rowan's shoes. And you bet my brother's life on a stunt just to protect this absolute garbage? Dead silence fell over the sprawling living room. All 8 brothers froze in place. Rachel clutched her rapidly bruising cheek, staring at me like I was a monster. You hit me? I hit a heartless, backstabbing parasite. I roared. Dad surged to his feet, his face purple. You ungrateful brat. You commit a crime and then dare to assault your sister? He raised his hand high, aiming a brutal strike at my face. I didn't blink. I didn't dodge. I stared him down. But a millisecond before the blow landed, a strong, pale hand wrapped like an iron vice around my father's wrist. It was Rowan. He slowly turned his head, looking at my bloodshot eyes, and spoke with terrifying, absolute clarity. Dad, I believe her. The force of my father's swinging palm cut through the stagnant air of the grand living room, but the hit never came. Rowan's hand locked around Dad's wrist like a band of forged steel. The second brother, whose palms were still wrapped in fresh white bandages from his close brush with death on set, didn't flinch. His face was entirely devoid of color. But his eyes burned with a dark, suffocating fury. Dad, Rowan said softly, his voice dropping into a register so low it vibrated. In the floorboards. If you lay a single finger on her, I am leaving this family. Tonight. And I am taking Hickey Entertainment with me. Dad froze, his face flushing from red to an unsightly purple. Rowan. Have you gone blind? Look at what she did to your hands. Look at how she treated your mother and Rachel. I am looking, Rowan replied smoothly, violently shoving Dad's arm back. And for the first time in months, I am seeing everything with absolute clarity. Before Dad could scream again, a cold, calculated clap echoed from the top of the marble staircase. Arthur descended slowly, step by precise step. He had removed his suit jacket, his charcoal vest accentuating his towering height. In his left hand, he held a sleek black tablet. Behind him walked Felix, Silas, and Zane, forming an impenetrable wall of absolute authority. Rachel, Arthur said, his voice terrifyingly calm. You said Kelly went into the prop room to sabotage Rowan's harness. Rachel shrank back against Mom, her knuckles white as she clutched Mom's sleeve. Why yes. I saw her with my own eyes. She was messing with the safety lines right before the shoot. Arthur didn't even look up from his screen. Fascinating. Because the set had 6 4K security cameras installed by my security detail 3 days ago to monitor high-risk stunts. Felix, project the feed. Felix pulled out his phone, tapped a few commands, and the massive 80-inch display on the living room wall flickered to life. The video was crystal clear. It showed the interior of the prop room 2 hours before the broadcast. Kelly was nowhere to be seen. Instead, the camera captured Tristan creeping inside, wearing an oversized hoodie. He opened the safety rig lock, deliberately slitting the internal retention threads with a small box cutter, before handing a thick envelope of cash to the lead prop master. 3 minutes later, Rachel walked into the frame, handed Tristan a spare keycard, and gave him a triumphant hug. Mom's breath hitched in her throat. Dad's eyes nearly bulged out of his sockets. No, that's a fake. That's AI generated. Rachel shrieked, her voice cracking into a panicked, high-pitched squawk. Kelly paid someone to manipulate the video. Mom, you know me. I would never. Quiet, Oliver stepped forward from the shadows, holding a printed sheaf of bank statements. His tone was as sterile as an operating room. These are the offshore transaction logs from HSBC Geneva. $400,000. Transferred from an account registered under Arthur's forged signature directly to a media agency called Vanguard PR. Oliver tossed the papers onto the coffee table right in front of Dad. The memo line reads, target Rowan Hickey. Frame Kelly Hickey. Maximize public outrage. The silence that followed was suffocating. Tristan, who had been standing by the entryway waiting to play the savior, slowly backed toward the front door. His hand quietly fumbled behind his back for the brass doorknob. Click. Zane blocked the doorway without turning around. The youngest brother, leaning his broad shoulders against the solid oak frame, cracked his knuckles with a sickening pop. Where do you think you're going, garbage? I have nothing to do with this. Tristan stammered, his face pale as paper, sweat dripping down his temple. Rachel made me do it. She said if I didn't help her ruin Kelly, she'd take back the Porsche. I was forced. Tristan. Rachel screamed in horror, looking at him as if he had stabbed her. How could you say that? I gave you everything. I stole from Arthur for you. You crazy bitch, you dragged me into this. Tristan yelled back, entirely abandoning his gentleman persona. You said Kelly was just an orphan trash can. Girl who didn't belong here. You promised me I'd get a cut of the Hickey family stock if I played along. Mom staggered backward, her hand flying to her chest. She looked between Rachel's hysterical face and the indisputable evidence playing on the giant screen. Rachel, you did all of this? You tried to kill your own brother? He's not my brother. Rachel roared, completely snapping under the pressure. The fake, delicate tears vanished, replaced by an ugly, twisted malice. None of them are my brothers. They never loved me. The moment Kelly walked through that door, they looked at her like she was precious gold, while I was just a placeholder. You were a placeholder, Arthur snapped coldly, stepping down off the last stair. His dark eyes held no warmth, only the freezing void of absolute judgment. And a deeply flawed one at that. Arthur turned to two heavy-set men in sharp suits standing near the foyer. Security. Escort Mr. Vance and Miss Rachel off the premises. File a formal police report for corporate fraud, embezzlement, grand larceny, and attempted manslaughter. Arthur. No. You can't do this to me. Rachel thrashed as two security officers seized her arms, dragging her across the polished marble. Mom. Save me. Dad. Dad reached out an arm instinctively. Arthur, wait, she was raised by us for 20 years. Touch them, and I strip your board votes by midnight, Arthur said, his voice dropping into a razor-thin blade. You let a viper nest in this house while your real daughter bled herself dry working 3 jobs. You don't get a say anymore. Mom fell to her knees, weeping hysterically as Rachel and Tristan were forcibly hauled out into the pouring rain, their pathetic curses fading into the night. Dad stood frozen, his raised hand still hovering awkwardly in the air, his face filled with shame and panic as he turned to face me. Kelly, sweetheart. I didn't know. I was deceived. I didn't even look at him. I picked up the ice pack from the side table, walked straight past my biological parents, and gently pressed it against Rowan's bruised, bandaged hands. Does it burn? I asked quietly, my voice soft and entirely focused on him. I brought an aloe-based soothing cream from the kitchen. We need to rewrap this before it inflames. Rowan looked down at me, his sharp, movie star features softening into a look of overwhelming tenderness. He reached out with his uninjured fingers and lightly brushed the corner of my eye. It doesn't hurt anymore, Kelly, Rowan whispered softly. Not a bit. That night, the atmosphere in the Hickey estate underwent a seismic shift. My parents tried 3 separate times to approach my wing of the house. Each time, they were met at the corridor by a different brother. Jack stood guard at 10 p.m. with his arms crossed, his gaze threatening enough to make Dad back down without a word. Silas sat outside my door at midnight, calmly reading a medical journal with noise-canceling headphones resting around his neck, entirely ignoring Mom's tearful pleas. By 2 a.m., the 8 brothers had gathered in Arthur's private study. I sat in the high-backed leather armchair, wrapped in a plush cashmere blanket that Felix had brought me, sipping a hot cup of honey lemon tea brewed by Jax. The police have formally processed Rachel and Tristan, Arthur stated, placing his phone on the desk. Tristan's father called me 5 times in the last hour, begging to settle out of court. He offered to liquidate their entire family logistics firm just to drop the charges. Did you accept? Zane asked, spinning a silver pocket knife between his fingers. With a dark smirk. I shorted their company's stock 40 minutes ago, Arthur replied without a trace of emotion. They will file for bankruptcy by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Tristan will be facing up to 12 years in a federal facility for corporate conspiracy and reckless endangerment. And Rachel? I asked softly, taking a sip of the warm tea. She's currently in a holding cell, Oliver cut in, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses. Her legal counsel tried to claim psychological distress. I personally submitted her psychiatric evaluation from last year proving she is 100% mentally competent. She will stand trial as an adult. Good, Sebastian muttered from the corner. He was reclining against a velvet sofa, a soft neck brace supporting his spine. She used my studio brushes too. Paint that garbage for Tristan. I had to throw out 3 imported horsehair brushes because of her. Felix chuckled, leaning against Arthur's desk. The internet is having a field day. The unedited footage of the prop room went viral an hour ago. Rowan's fans are practically razing Tristan's social media pages to the ground. I looked around the room at these 8 formidable, impossibly powerful men. Each of them was a titan in their respective domain, yet right now, every single pair of eyes was anchored on me with genuine concern. Kelly, Arthur spoke softly, leaning forward and resting his elbows on the desk. Tomorrow, the news of the Hickey family heiress swap will be officially released to the global press. Your identity as the sole blood heiress will be solidified. I don't care about the press or the money, Arthur, I said honestly, looking him dead in the eye. I survived on instant noodles and 4 hours of sleep a night for 2 years. Money is just paper. But I paused, looking at Oliver's wrist, Sebastian's neck, Rowan's hands, and Arthur's temples. I do care that none of you skip your physical therapy sessions. A heavy, stunned silence filled the study, followed by a sudden burst of genuine laughter from Jax. She's unbelievable, Jax grinned, shaking his head. The entire world is about to fall at her feet, and she's worrying about our posture. Rule number 1, Silas whispered with a rare, faint smile from behind his textbook. A brother's health is the sister's priority. Arthur's sharp lips curved into a warm, unfettered smile. He stood up, walked around the massive mahogany desk, and stopped right in front of my chair. Crouching down so we were at eye level, he extended a broad, warm hand and gently patted my head. You don't have to protect us anymore, Kelly, Arthur said, his voice deep and thick with quiet emotion. From tonight on, the 8 of us protect you. The news hit the university campus like a megaton bomb the following morning. When the matte black Maybach custom built by Jax's private workshop pulled up to the main gates of St. Jude University, a crowd of hundreds of students had already gathered. I stepped out of the rear door, dressed in a simple, immaculate cream-colored wool sweater and tailored trousers. Beside me stood Zane, wearing a leather jacket and sunglasses, looking like a high-end bodyguard, and Rowan, who wore a black coat that masked his hand bandages. The whispers swept through the crowd like wildfire. Is that Kelly? Look at her, she doesn't look like a poor scholarship kid at all. Did you see the news? Rachel was a fake. She forged documents and tried to murder Rowan Hickey. My God, Tristan was using her money the whole time. He's facing prison. I walked with steady, unbothered steps toward the library. I had an advanced lecture on orthopedic rehab at 10, and I wasn't about to let drama ruin my attendance record. Kelly, wait. A pathetic, ragged voice broke through the murmurs. From behind the marble fountain at the center of the plaza, a disheveled figure scrambled out. It was Tristan. His hair was a matted mess, his eyes bloodshot, and his designer jacket torn at the seam. He looked like he hadn't slept a second. Security guards attempted to stop him, but I raised a hand, signaling them to pause. Tristan stumbled toward me, falling to his knees on the concrete right in front of the crowd. He pulled a crumpled red velvet ring box from his pocket and held it up with trembling hands. Kelly, please. Tristan sobbed, tears cutting dirty streaks through the dust on his face. I was tricked. Rachel threatened me. She made me act like I hated you. I've always loved you, Kelly. Do you remember the past? You baked pastries for me. You knitted that scarf. You bought me those sneakers. He opened the box to reveal a cheap, synthetic diamond ring. I bought this with the last of my allowance. Marry me, Kelly. Tell Arthur to drop the charges. We can start over. I'll never look at another woman again. The crowd gasped in disgust. Is he serious? He treated her like trash for a year. What a pathetic parasite. He's begging because he's going to jail. I stood above him, looking down at his kneeling form with cold, unyielding detachment. It felt surreal to think that just 4 months ago, I had worked midnight shifts at a car wash just to buy this man a pair of shoes. Looking at him now, he was smaller than an ant. Tristan, I said, my voice effortlessly carrying across the silent plaza. He looked up with a glimmer of desperate hope in his eyes. Yes, Kelly. You forgive me, right? The pastries I made for you were an experimental recipe I used to test if stale. Flour tasted bad, I said deadpan. The scarf was made from the cheapest acrylic yarn I could find at a discount bin, and it gave you a neck rash. And those sneakers? I smirked slightly. They were knockoffs from a night market. I kept the rest of the money to pay for my brother Silas's specialized tea leaves. Tristan's jaw dropped. What? You were never a prince, Tristan. I leaned down slightly, whispering so only he could hear. You were just a guinea pig I used to practice taking care of people until I found my real family. Zane stepped forward, tossing a heavy manila envelope directly onto Tristan's lap. That's a formal notice of asset seizure from Hickey Financial, Zane drawled, pulling down his sunglasses to glare at him with absolute contempt. Your dad's logistics firm went under 20 minutes ago. The police are waiting at the north gates for you. As if on cue, 2 uniformed officers strode into the plaza, handcuffs gleaming in the morning sun. Tristan Vance, you are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and destruction of evidence, an officer announced, clamping the cold steel around Tristan's wrists. No. Kelly. Save me. Kelly. I love you. Tristan screamed, thrashing wildly as he was dragged across the pavement, his cheap ring rolling into a nearby drainage grate. I didn't turn around once. I simply turned to Rowan and Zane, offering them a bright, genuine smile. Come on. Let's go to the library. I need to return a book on spinal adjustment. While Tristan's arrest signaled the end of his social standing, Rachel's legal battle was only just beginning. 3 weeks after the Plaza incident, the preliminary hearing for Rachel's case took place at the Grand Central Courthouse. The courtroom was packed with international journalists, high society figures, and legal observers. Rachel sat at the defense table, wearing a drab gray prison jumpsuit. Without her expensive makeup, luxury skincare, and designer clothes, she looked utterly ordinary, pale, haggard, and visibly trembling. Her biological parents, my mother and father, sat in the second row of the gallery, looking 10 years older. They had tried repeatedly to pull strings to get her bail, but Arthur had placed a complete financial lockdown on all non-approved family assets, effectively stripping Dad of his executive spending power. I sat in the front row, flanked by Arthur on my left and Oliver on my right. All 8 brothers were present, occupying the entire front row like an elite guard. The prosecution calls Dr. Oliver Hickey to the stand, the prosecutor announced. Oliver adjusted his tie, walked calmly to the witness stand, and swore the oath. Dr. Hickey, the prosecutor began, can you explain the extent of the damage caused to Mr. Rowan Hickey as a result of the altered safety gear? Oliver adjusted his glasses, his voice crisp and sharp. The safety harness was tampered with using a sharp blade designed to cut through high-tensile nylon under heavy load. Had Rowan dropped another 2 feet, the rope would have snapped entirely. A fall from 30 feet would have resulted in immediate cervical spine fracture, permanent paralysis, or fatal internal hemorrhaging. He turned his cool, analytical gaze toward Rachel. Furthermore, as a medical professional, I reviewed the financial logs. The $400,000 embezzled by the defendant was funneled through 3 shell corporations to purchase dangerous illegal pharmaceuticals meant to slip into my personal beverage supply to cause muscle tremors during surgery. The courtroom erupted into a frenzy of murmuring. Quiet in the court. The judge slammed his gavel down firmly. Rachel leaped from her chair, her face contorted with insane desperation. That's a lie. I didn't try to poison you, Oliver. I just wanted you to fail a surgery so you'd rely on me. I did it for us. Silence the defendant, the judge ordered sharply. You monsters. Rachel screamed, pointing her trembling finger at me. She stole my life. She took my brother's. She took my status. I was a Hickey for 20 years. She's just a dirty, poor girl who got lucky. Arthur slowly stood up from his seat in the gallery. He didn't raise his voice. But the entire room instantly fell silent under the sheer weight of his presence. Your Honor, Arthur spoke with quiet power. The defense claims the defendant suffered emotional distress from being replaced. I would like to submit Exhibit G, the original DNA records from 20 years ago. The bailiff handed a folder to the judge. 20 years ago, Arthur explained coldly, my birth mother was admitted to a private clinic. The records show that Rachel's biological mother, a head nurse at the facility, deliberately swapped the wristbands of the two infants to secure a life of luxury for her child. Rachel was never an innocent party. She found out about the swap 5 years ago and actively suppressed the true identity records while funneled money into offshore accounts. The final nail was driven into the coffin. Rachel froze, her jaw slack, her eyes wild with realization. She looked at our mother, who lowered her head in utter shame, weeping into a handkerchief. Dad covered his face with both hands, completely broken. The court finds the defendant guilty on all counts, the judge declared without hesitation. Bail is denied. Sentence to be delivered upon final trial, with a mandatory minimum of 15 years without parole. As the guards grabbed Rachel's arms to haul her away, she caught my eye. I didn't glare at her. I didn't mock her. I simply looked at her with serene, total indifference. To me, she was no longer a rival, nor an enemy. She was simply a footnote that had been permanently erased. With the storm finally settled, the Hickey family estate returned to a state of unprecedented harmony. 6 months passed in a flash. Under my daily regimen of targeted physical therapy, custom herbal teas, and strict sleep schedules, the 8 brothers underwent a complete transformation. Arthur's chronic, debilitating migraines were entirely cured through a combination of my deep tissue cervical massages and a revised work schedule I forced him to adopt, which involved turning off his phone at 9 p.m. sharp. Oliver's surgical wrist strain was completely rehabilitated, allowing him to successfully perform the world's first triple bypass pediatric surgery, setting a global medical record. Sebastian hosted his solo art exhibition at the National Gallery. The centerpiece was a breathtaking, 6-foot canvas titled The Sun at Dawn, depicting a girl holding a knitted scarf under a radiant golden light. It sold at auction for $12 million, which Sebastian immediately placed into a private trust fund in my name. Felix released his new album, 8 Strands, which broken every streaming record in history. The dedication inside the vinyl sleeve read simply, to Kelly, the melody that brought us home. Jax opened his private motor circuit, named the K1 Grand Prix, and gave me the very first custom-engineered pink carbon fiber supercar. I used it to drive to my kinesiology finals, completely shocking my professors. Rowan won the Best Actor award at the International Film Festival. During his live acceptance speech, watched by 200 million people worldwide, he held up his restored, unscarred hands and said into the microphone, I owe my life, my career, and my heart to my little sister, Kelly. Without her, I would be nothing. Silas completed his doctorate in biomedical engineering 2 years early, dedicating his patent on nerve regeneration tech to me. And Zane, the rebellious youngest brother, stopped skipping classes, enrolled in the business academy, and proudly served as my personal driver and bodyguard every single day. One sunny afternoon, the 8 brothers and I sat on the sprawling green lawn behind the main estate mansion, enjoying a lavish afternoon tea. Mom and Dad sat far off in the tea house, watching us from a respectful distance. They had long since apologized, weeping and begging for forgiveness. But while I harbored no hatred toward them, I maintained a polite, gentle boundary. They were my parents, but these 8 men were my absolute world. Arthur took a sip of his black tea, his face relaxed and entirely free of pain. Kelly, the board of directors held a vote this morning. I looked up from my textbook, wiping a crumb of mango tart from my lip. A vote? For what? Arthur pulled a leather-bound document from his jacket and placed it on the glass table. We have restructured the Hickey Global Conglomerate. Effective today, 51% of all voting shares are transferred to your name. You are officially the largest shareholder and the supreme head of the Hickey family. I blinked, staring at the document. Arthur, I'm still studying kinesiology. I don't know how to run a Wall Street firm. You don't have to, Oliver smiled gently, pouring me a fresh cup of tea. We work for you now. You just tell us what to do. Rule number 3, Felix winked, leaning his arms on the back of my chair. The sister commands, the brothers execute. I looked around the table at my 8 brothers, the Wall Street titan, the international megastar, the elite surgeon, the legendary producer, the racing prodigy, the genius researcher, the master artist, and the fiercest protector. They were powerful, flawless, and undeniably brilliant. And every single one of them was looking at me with unconditional, unwavering devotion. I smiled, picking up my tea glass and raising it high into the warm sunlight. "Well then," I said, my eyes sparkling with absolute joy. "As your boss, my first official order is, drink your herbal tea, check your posture, and get ready for movie night." All 8 brothers raised their glasses in unison, their laughter echoing across the vast, golden estate, cementing a legacy that would never be broken again.